Welcome to From the Bleachers. I'm your host, as always, Shamus Clancy, coming to you from the wonderful Bleeding Green Nation Radio podcast network. Now, today I am joined by Fox Sports The Gamblers, Mark Henry Jr. Mark, thanks for coming on the show.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah, I've done a couple of radio hits for Mark's show on Fox Sports The Gambler. That's 102.5 FM, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely check out Mark on there and the radio station as a whole. I love listening to that, and a little bit of an alternative if you don't feel like listening to WIP or the Fanatic, whatever you want to do on your drive-in or sitting at home, working from home, whatever it is, definitely check out Fox Sports The Gambler. You have Mark on today. We are going to rank NFC contenders. Had some pods last week. Zoe and I on odds and end zones. I joined BLG on BGN Radio to talk about the first day of Eagles OTAs that was open to the press. We will do that tomorrow. I'm recording this Tuesday morning. Me and Mark are. Wednesday, the Eagles, I believe, not official, will have another open OTA practice. So BLG and I will chat tomorrow night too. So we're trying to bring you as much Eagles content as possible. Even though it's only June, it's only going to even get more crazy from here. Obviously, this is the Eagles in Philadelphia we're talking about. They announced training camp starts July 26th yesterday. And then once the season comes on, all bets are off. Little Fox Sports The Gambler pun right there. All right, Mark, let's get into it. Let's get into it. My 16th team, I have maybe not the 16th team odds-wise. I checked the odds, too, to kind of see how what I was saying stacked up to Vegas in the sports books. 16th in the NFC, ranking all the teams in the NFC. I have the Carolina Panthers.
I had that. I don't have the Panthers quite at 16. I had an unpopular one here, but I'm sticking with Detroit. I think they were the worst in the NFC last year. And I think a lot of people have these expectations for Detroit when Dan Campbell's still their coach and Jared Goff's still their quarterback. There's some fun stuff there with the roster, but I don't think that – I think a lot of people look at some of the close games they had and they think those are going to turn into wins. I'd agree if they changed one of the two most important things in football, but yeah, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I had the Lions coming out at 15th. I originally had them 16th, and I remembered the Panthers and everything that's still there that went horribly for them last year, and I think that there's actually disaster potential there. The Lions are kind of an ironically fun team, like the way someone might follow the Charlotte Hornets and the NBA, because like Dan Campbell has all of those crazy sound bites and bite kneecaps and all that stuff. So they're kind of a fun team. If you were watching on Red Zone and they were playing the Packers, you probably wouldn't hate seeing the Lions pulling upset, that type of vibe. But the Panthers are just like seem poverty franchise territory with Matt Rule. And then I don't know, he's still there. Like Joe Brady got canned last year. I would have kept Joe Brady and made him head coach and canned Matt Rule. And then the Sam Darnold trade obviously set that franchise back multiple seasons.
Oh, I 100% agree. I've never been a Darnold guy. I never, even dating back to the draft. And people just continue to talk themselves into him because they liked him at USC. And I never really was even that impressed with him at USC. Matt Rule is another guy. I wasn't even impressed with him in college. Like when all the pandemonium with making him a NFL head coaching candidate from Baylor, everyone wanted a piece at him. And I was like, I don't get what everyone's so excited about. It's not like this guy's an offensive genius or a defensive genius. He's kind of like a program guy, like
CEO coach.
Yeah, I never got it.
Yeah. I'm not a big CEO coach guy because I think if the talent on the roster or the team is performing well, it's because of the offensive play call. We're talking about the offense performing well specifically. And if that guy's calling the plays and that the offense is succeeding right there, it's going to end up where that guy is going to get poached and become the head coach elsewhere to call plays. And the Eagles seem to be having that shift too. And I know we're getting a little off topic with the Birds, but towards the end of last season, offensive coordinator Shane Steichen took over a lot of the play calling duty. And that was when the Birds really changed from that pass heavy attack early in the season to something that was more run heavy as it went on and, played to Jalen Hurts' strength and the strength of the offensive line more handedly. And it looks like Steichen's going to be calling plays going into the season from week 1 on. So I wonder that Nick Sirianni's in that territory where now he's kind of a CEO coach, wants to have his hand in different aspects of the team, whether it's defensively, everything, working with the wide receivers specifically more so than calling plays. And if the Eagles are good this year, maybe Shane Steichen's gone come next year and Sirianni's back to calling plays. So I think there's some issues I have with the CEO coach model.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern. You'd like to think, that report came out with Steichen taking over the play calling duties. You'd like to think that Sirianni was still really involved.
Yes, I was there, and Shane sort of indicated, hey, it's still a group effort. We're still working with him. We're working with Jalen. We're working with Brian Johnson, all of those things.
Yeah. So you know, it's like the Belichick situation in New England right now, where everyone's saying, "Oh, Matt Patricia's the offensive coordinator," and I kind of roll my eyes and I'm like, I mean, Bill Belichick's the offensive coordinator. He's going to be the one calling all the shots, even if he's not the one directly calling the plays. He's giving you the menu to pick from.
Yeah.
So I kind of think it's a situation like that. Not that Sirianni's Bill Belichick, but not quite yet. But I agree with you on the anti-CEO coach. And I also agree with the Joe Brady thing. I think what Joe Brady did with Teddy Bridgewater that first year in Carolina was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
He stinks. And he made him look competent. He had did really well stats-wise. Obviously didn't translate to a lot of wins, but allowed Teddy to get another starting job elsewhere when he really, I don't think, was deserved as a player in a vacuum. But Brady made him look well. And I'm still going to bank on that. What is it, 2019 LSU team is one of the most dominant college teams ever, specifically offensively. And, it's a situation where, let's say we're talking about Nick Sirianni as the CEO head coach. Eagles do really well. Maybe they win division, win 11, 12 games. It goes, best case scenario. Shane Steichen has the offense looking great. Run the pass ratio is great. Makes Jalen Hurts look really good as a passer. If he's gone next year and becomes the head coach of, I don't know, the Giants or the Lions because Dan Campbell gets canned, Joe Brady's the guy I would bring in as offensive coordinator.
Yeah, he was the guy I wanted at head coach when we hired Nick Sirianni. Like, I was ready to hire him to make that big of a leap. They interviewed him at that time, and I was all in. And I'm happy with Nick Sirianni's first year, though. So I'm not going to yet.
So I had the Panthers at 16 and the Lions at 15. You had the Lions at 16 yourself. Who's 15 for you?
I had the Seahawks at 15.
Okay,
and it's just because of the QB situation with Drew Lock. I actually think they should go with Geno. Like, Geno was semi-competent last year as a backup. Yeah. And I don't think we've ever seen anything out of Drew Lock other than him, dancing to Young Jeezy on the sidelines. I don't think we've ever seen anything that makes you think that he can be a starting quarterback. There's actually some pieces to be excited about on the roster. Like, I mean, they have good weapons in terms of DK and Lockett. They drafted a running back, which I don't love, but he's at least a weapon. They have things to be excited about, but when you don't have the quarterback figured out, and I think Pete Carroll, it's a weird situation. He's not going to fire himself because he's kind of the guy in the organization with the most power, but I could see like a step down after 1-8 start or something like that. Like, I think they've got disaster potential. And then I have the Panthers at 14. All three of those teams, you could have convinced me to rank those three in any way in terms of how this season plays out.
Yeah, I had the Seahawks at 13th. I had them originally at 15th, and I forgot a team or two and went back and changed some things. Again, it's a situation where there's disaster potential. Pete Carroll, I'm surprised Pete allowed himself to still be head coach. As you think trading Russell, is the bookend on that era of Seahawks football. But at the same time, it was time for Pete to step away and just do a front office role, bring in someone new as the head coach. So I think it's a little weird situation there, and not to jump too much. So I had the Seahawks at 13 and then the Giants at 14.
Yeah, I had the Giants a little higher at 12. Just because I'm a little bit nervous that the Giants are becoming competent. I'm anti-Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is the worst quarterback that's gotten I can't remember a quarterback who's gotten 3 straight chances, 3 straight years to prove himself that I don't think has proven himself less than Daniel Jones. I think he's nothing. I don't think there's anything there to build on. A lot of people seem to disagree with me. I think we'll find out this year. But I do think Brian Daboll was a really, really good hire. I think what he did with Josh Allen was incredibly impressive. I think Joe Shane has shown, I liked the first round from New York. They got that bookend tackle, and Kayvon Thibodeau was the guy that I had number 1 in the class. So I think
great draft for them.
I think that's a big swing for them. And I think their defense was already really, really good last year. I think you saw at times their defense showed flashes of being top 10 to 15 defense. But when you have Daniel Jones turning the ball over the way he did and their backups turning the ball over when Jones was out the way they did, they were just completely incompetent offensively, and Joe Judge was a complete moron. So I don't think that they're going to break through and win more than 6 or 7 games this year because of Daniel Jones. But I do think Daboll and Shane are, building competence in New York. It makes me a little bit nervous for the future.
Yeah, I think that was an amazing head coaching hire. If it was 2021, Daboll was the guy, one of the Eagles to hire before Sirianni became the guy for them. I know he did a couple interviews. I don't know if he interviewed with the Eagles specifically. I can't remember, but he was on the circuit that year before he stayed another year to serve as the Bills offensive coordinator. And looking at a comp that you kind of made earlier, is it a situation where I could see the way Joe Brady maximized Teddy Bridgewater, who isn't that good? I could see a situation now where Dabble, even though I'm not a believer in Daniel Jones in the slightest, and I think he's, rather terrible, maybe he brings some competency there.
Yeah, it's just going to be tough with him because at least Teddy, you can mold because he's not going to make the mistakes. You're at least gonna get like high percentage throws, and even if he's not going to take the chances, Daniel Jones is such a risk taker and he's so turnover prone. If Brian Daboll is able to make him not a turnover prone quarterback, I will be extremely nervous for what happens when they do go and get their QB in New York.
Yeah, so we're jumping around a lot. So let's roll in for our bottom 4 teams. I have 16th the Panthers, 15th the Lions, 14th the Giants, and 13th the Seahawks.
Yeah, I had Lions at 16, Seahawks at 15, Panthers at 14, and then I have the Bears at 13. I hate what they did this offseason. They go and hire everything about it. I hate everything about it. They go and hire a defensive coordinator, which, you have Justin Fields, you have a young rookie quarterback, hire someone that's going to come in to work with him. And then they go out and they do absolutely nothing to help the worst wide receiver core in football after Allen Robinson left. And they do nothing in the draft to help out Justin Fields in terms of the O-line or wide receivers. And I just don't see the vision of what Chicago, it feels like they're almost throwing in the towel in the Justin Fields era before it even began. And I'm not that I do a podcast with a guy named Shane Half. He loves Justin Fields. He thinks he's like a franchise quarterback. I've never been quite there. I do think his athleticism.
Me neither.
He's got the athleticism. He's got the traits. There's stuff to be excited about. I think there's potential there. I think it's a 50-50 chance that he's your guy. At least give him the tools to try to succeed and prove that he can be. Like, it doesn't even feel like he's getting that chance right now. So I have the Bears at 13, and then I have the Giants at 12, who we just talked about.
Yeah, so we have the bottom 5 team the same because I have Chicago at 12. I kind of put them ahead of Seattle and New York and Detroit, thinking that there is still an amount of upside there with Justin Field. As you talked about earlier, the traits are there. I'm not a huge believer in the guy. Maybe to put it in, we look at what the Eagles did with Doug Peterson, putting that infrastructure around a young quarterback, that model. And, Jacksonville's hoping to recreate that with Peterson and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. So I have them a tad higher because there is upside there that maybe Fields breaks out in his second year and he's starting off the season as the full-time starter, but still a team that I don't think is going to be doing much of anything this year. The Eagles have them on the schedule. I think that should be in, it's a road game, but that's part of looking at the Eagles schedule as a whole thing. And this is rather easy. And given the additions made to that roster, there's a path to true contention this year. And obviously we'll get to the Birds in a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a clear bottom 5, and then there.
I like that. That's a tier almost.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a couple. There's almost a clear top 4 too, and there's a clear bottom 5. Everything else, I think we're gonna start to really differ because I have some weird rankings upcoming that are not really in line with Vegas or consensus on some of these teams.
Okay, who do you have as 11?
So 10 and 11, I have like the same record for on my rankings. So you could convince me either way. I put the Saints at 11. I'm super low on this Saints team. I've gotten, hashtag Saints Twitter has come after me very much in the last couple of weeks. Who would have thought that the city of New Orleans and Saints fans don't respect what Sean Payton brings to a football team? I think Sean Payton's the second best football coach of my lifetime. Like, I've always been a Sean Payton guy. I think
he's a Hall of Famer, no doubt.
Yeah, I think he's a genius. Besides Bill Belichick, there's never been a head coach where, as an Eagles fan, I've been as sure that he's going to outcoach my guy, like whether that be Andy Reid or Chip Kelly or Doug Peterson or Nick Sirianni. Sirianni's actually done a pretty good job. I think he's 2-0 in the last 2, or I guess Jalen Hurts is 2-0 in the last 2 years.
The Saints have never been all the heartache. The Saints, the 2 teams that just always have had the Eagles number over the last 15, 20 years. It seems the Sean Payton era Saints, and then also the Russell Wilson era Seahawks, and both of those guys are gone now. So only room to go up. I had the Saints at 10, and I'm right with you with a lot of that stuff. Losing Peyton's huge, and I am just not a believer in Jameis Winston. And if it's a situation when Taysom Hill comes in there, Eagles looking good having their first round pick next year. I think there's a scenario where this could definitely be a top 10 pick, and 1 or 2 things go wrong, that could be a top 5 pick.
I totally agree. And that's what I was saying on Twitter for Saints Twitter to come after me. And they're like, oh, we won 8 games last year and now we get Jameis back. And it's like, all right.
You lost a Hall of Fame coach.
Exactly. Like what you're losing is way more than what you're gaining. And then I actually think Chris Olave is really NFL ready. I think Olave is going to have a really good year. I like that pick in terms of right now. I don't know if he's got the upside of some of the other receivers. I do think he's going to step in and be one of the best rookie receivers this year. But I don't know if we can count on anything from Michael Thomas anymore. Like Michael Thomas to me is a complete question mark. Complete question mark. So for what Olave is bringing, I don't know what Thomas is bringing. That's really the only two weapons in the offense outside of Kamara. And I just, with Jameis, I've actually long time been almost a Jameis apologist in his Tampa days. Yeah. I do think there was an upside there. What Jameis was last year, and I know that he was winning games. He was like a game manager last year. He was throwing for like 150 yards in wins where, they were winning the game, but that wasn't the Jameis that they signed up for. And then now he's coming off of a torn ACL. So like, I do not see it with the Saints. And I have the Saints right next to the team I have at 10, which is the Falcons. I have them finishing with the same
I had
record.
Falcons 11, Saints 10.
I literally just ranked the Falcons higher than the Saints because I've done some like research in terms of the over-unders for this year, and I'm kind of crunching my own numbers on records and stuff. The more I look at last year, and the more I think Arthur Smith might be a really good coach. Like that team had no business winning. That team had no business winning 7 games. None. Like absolutely none. That roster was bad. I think Matt Ryan's trash. I'm not a Matt Ryan guy. I'm not high on what the Colts are going to be this year. I think Matt Ryan's a statue at this point, and I don't think he's got anything from the MVP season left. But I think what they did last year was unbelievable. He turned Cordero Patterson into a thing after a decade of him not being one. So I think that there's a little bit of upside. Like you hope if you're the Falcons that Mariota kind of has a little bit of a reverse
the way
Ryan
Winston
Tannehill
apologist, guys that went top 2 in the 2015 draft, I still am a Mariota apologist. Given all the Chip Oregon stuff at the time, I will just never quit him and still think he can be a quality. And then maybe that's just, I don't know if it's ironic or just being an idiot or, wistful from my college years watching college football, but right situation, I think he can be good. I think he can, take a okay team and make them a good team.
I absolutely had Marcus Mariota number 1 on my draft board that year.
I was trading everything. Every pick, Fletcher, Cox, whatever. It's all on the table for him.
I had a funny little backstory. I had a really big fraternity party.
Nice.
When Marcus Mariota, the NFL draft night that he went second. And I remember the whole night, I was just stuck on my phone. Like, did we make the trade? Like, even when the tweet went out and it's like, oh, the Titans draft Marcus Mariota. I'm like, oh, that has to mean we're going to trade our pick. And then these future first round picks. And I just remember being on my phone the whole night, ready for the trade. Never quite got that Schefter trade. It ended up being ended up working out.
It worked itself out.
Yeah, it ended up working out. So, but I remember being so upset that night. It ruined my night. Ruined a fun party. But going back to the point of it, Mariota could have the reverse Ryan Tannehill thing. Like, Tannehill went to the Titans and after being a disappointment in Miami, became a competent starter. I don't know how. I'm not the highest Tannehill guy, but Mariota could maybe go be an average starter. Or if he doesn't work out, I'm not the highest Desmond Ridder guy either. But there's people who like his upside, so you bring him in. Maybe he impresses you. I think they could win 7 or 8 games this year, and even in spite of the roster, just because of what I saw from Arthur Smith last year.
I like it. I like the takes. So we're right there. 10 and 11 have the same teams, but flip-flopped order. So we're getting into the top 10 now. Number 9, I have the Washington Commies.
I've got 3 C teams coming up, 7, 8, 9. I'm actually a little bit higher on Washington than consensus this year. At number 9, I've got the Cardinals here. At number 9, and I think that they'd be slightly higher without the DeAndre Hopkins news of the suspension, and then you already have the injury concerns of the last couple years for DeAndre Hopkins. I'm actually way higher on Kyler Murray than most. I think I like
Kyler a lot.
The narrative has really shifted on Kyler ever since they started 9-0. I know that they had that terrible second half without Hopkins.
The playoff game was a disaster.
Embarrassing. And then you have this off-season, stuff going on with Kyler. But people have kind of deleted the good parts of Kyler and the first 9 games of how good that Arizona offense looked. And the last couple of years, I think I just think Cliff Kingsbury's a moron. I don't think we scratched the surface on what Kyler Murray is yet, because we're dealing with a head coach who went, 6-6 with Patrick Mahomes in the Big 12. Like, the fact that Cliff Kingsbury failed upwards to being an NFL head coach, now he gets another extension, and they seem to be at least now picking him over Kyler for right now. It's crazy. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I would have gotten him right the hell out of there after that playoff disaster. That's not fully on Kyler. I know people are doing, full body language doctor examination on him, and that's whatever. Obviously, that went as poorly as possible for him, but I'm still a believer in him. I have them 7th, and we could talk about where we go from there. But Washington for me at 9. I think they could be competent the way you're talking about Atlanta, and you have that viewpoint in Atlanta. I think there's weapons around Wentz offensively. I think there's true skill talent there, and not too dissimilar from what happened with Indianapolis last year. And Wentz was competent the most of the year before it became 2020 Wentz, regressed to that in the final 2 weeks of the season, and that's a big blow up, and that's what causes Indianapolis to part ways on him, and Jim Irsay having freaking out about him in the media and all that crazy stuff. So I have them 9. I like Ron Rivera. We talk about like CEO type coach. I know he's a defensive minded guy, but I love that hire for them because it really brought stability, relatively speaking, given the way that maybe the worst franchise in North American professional sports. But I think it brought a sense of stability that franchise desperately needed. So I have them at 9. Again, a team I could see things go right, maybe 7-8 games.
Yeah, I have the Commanders at number 7 for me, and okay. I have them in the playoffs this year, which is a pretty surprising thing. I have them getting the wild card. I'm a little bit higher on Carson Wentz right now than most, which is funny because I was the one like standing on the table saying we needed to trade him so we can play Jalen Hurts and get value for him, which was the right decision. You get a first round pick and turns into AJ Brown, in a roundabout way. Worked itself Absolutely. I think it was the right move. And I still would take Hurts over Wentz if we're, ranking quarterbacks. But Wentz is kind of getting disrespected for what his season was last year. He was still 27 touchdowns and 7 picks. He had those 2 terrible games to end the season. But like you mentioned, with this Washington core of weapons, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and Antonio
I love Jahan.
Gibson.
I'm a Penn State hater.
Me too.
I love him. Yeah.
Me too, on both. Yeah. I think Jahan's really good, and I also hate Penn State. So we're on the same board there. But they also have McKissick out of the backfield to throw to. Yeah, they have Antonio Gibson, he's got hands. They have all
I'm buying my Antonio Gibson style. I really like him.
Yeah,
those Memphis running backs, I dig them all.
It's a shame. I wish McKissick, for fantasy purposes, I'm a fantasy football guy. I wish McKissick was gone so Gibson was getting the full workload, and I'd go all in on him as like a top 10 fantasy back because I think the talent's there, but they don't seem to want to use him in that role. But still, I think this is the best group of weapons Carson Wentz has had on a football team since 2017. Like, I would take it over the 2018 Eagles, even with, Golden Tate and Aguilar and Alshon. And I would take it over the 2019, 2020.
Would you take it over the Colts last year with JT? I know the receivers aren't as good as what Washington has.
Yeah, it's tough to compare because it's not like Taylor's catching like 70 balls or anything like that, but he's obviously a weapon in his own right in terms of handing the ball off. I would still take Washington just I think McLaurin's a monster. I'm high on Jahan. Like, they just have so many dudes there. So I think Wentz actually like propped up Pittman way higher than I ever would have expected Pittman to go statistically. So I'm a little bit higher on I'm higher on the Wentz side of the Washington Indy kind of, Indy went and got Matt Ryan. Washington went and got Carson Wentz. Everyone killed Washington for getting Wentz. Everyone praised Indy for getting Matt Ryan. I'm kind of the contrarian there. I kind of like what Washington did. And that defense could absolutely go back to 2020 form. I think that's the key for Washington for sure. Number 8 in front of Washington and after Arizona at number 9, I actually have Dallas. I've got the Cowboys coming in at number 8. I think there's regression coming for that defense on turnover luck.
So we have our 7th and 9th teams flip-flopped. So I have the Commanders at 9, the Cardinals at 7, but the Vikings at 8. That seems where we maybe have a different hiccup right there. So why do you have Dallas there? I have Dallas 6. So 6 through 9 for me. We went through the other teams. So 6, I have the Cowboys, 7th, Arizona, who we talked about, 8, Minnesota, and 9, Washington, who we talked about.
We've got 7 and 9 flipped, and we've got 6 and 8 flipped. I've got the Vikings at 6. I've got the Commanders at 7. The Cowboys.
Sell me on the Vikings.
Cardinals at
Sell
9.
me on the Vikings.
So I've sold myself on the Vikings over the last couple weeks as I'm going through it. You've got two teams in their division in the Bears and the Lions that they should get 4 wins against as long as they don't mess around. That's a really easy schedule. They've got one of the easier schedules in terms of strength of schedule from last year. And I think that this is a situation where Mike Zimmer it went on way too long. And I think that there was bad blood from him and Cousins, from him to the front office. The front office is gone now. They changed things around. I just think there's kind of a new life in the Vikings organization. And Kevin O'Connell, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know a ton about him. He comes from the Rams, he comes from McVay. McVay's the play caller, but you have to imagine O'Connell picked up a lot of the things from McVay. If you're buying in on the Vikings, and I'm not all the way there, I'm buying in on them as the 6th best team in the NFC, being a wild card team and getting back to where they were the last couple of years before last year. But I think you're buying in on Kevin O'Connell being one of these new young offensive coaches who does well right away and kind of implements a new system. I mean, you have Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen. All Kirk Cousins has to do is be competent. And while there is a ceiling with Kirk Cousins, I think there's a floor too. And I think last year was the floor. So I think bringing in an offensive guy is going to raise the tides of that. They really invested in the secondary with taking a safety and a cornerback with their first 2 picks. Andrew Booth Jr. was a guy I had in my top 15. Loved Andrew Booth, really wanted him on the Eagles. And I think Minnesota got him in the early part of the second round. I think he's going to be ready to play right away. I think that secondary is going to be a lot better. But you're buying in on Kevin O'Connell, and you're buying in on an offense getting better around superstar pieces.
Yeah, and Justin Jefferson I don't think it's hyperbolic to say he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory already.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I had them at 8. I think not a Kirk guy. Maybe that's just a Philly fan or historically a Philly fan thing for me.
I don't think there's many Kirk guys out there. I don't think there's
no, regardless of the area of the country, there aren't a lot of Kirk guys.
Yeah.
But I think, he is a win-with guy. There's always going to be a high enough floor that there's a respectability that comes there with Kirk Cousins, your quarterback. But as you said, the ceiling is right there as well. So Dallas, I have Dallas 6th. You're kind of fading Dallas a little bit. I still think they could win the NFC East. I don't think that's that crazy. I have the Eagles high, and I expect them to do so. I've kind of flip-flopped after the draft, having the Eagles higher than Dallas right now. They lost some pieces. Dak's been banged up, but I'm still a believer. I don't want to say I'm a believer in Dak Prescott because he's had a ton of success in this league. But if you're an Eagles fan going up and playing Dallas, I think Dak should still scare you a bit, even though this Eagles defense has improved.
Yeah, Dak's awesome. This has not my fading at Dallas has nothing to do with Dak. Dak's a top 10 quarterback. Eagles fans like to do this slander on Dak.
The Wentz Dak thing. Eagles in Philadelphia unfortunately took the L on that one.
100%, not even close. Yeah, we definitely took the L on that. Dak's a really good quarterback, but they lost Amari Cooper. The offensive line has more questions going into this year than it's ever had before. And then mainly, I was not high on Dallas going into last year, and they shocked me going into last year because their defense was so much better than I was expecting. And everyone's going to point to Dan Quinn. Everyone's going to point to Parsons, Diggs. I think a lot of it comes down to turnover luck, and they had the best turnover luck in football last year. That's not a repeatable thing. Like, I think that they're going to fade back to where they were before last year. So I'm not a believer in Dan Quinn as a top tier coach. I think he won the assistant of the year last year. I think Parsons just had a breakout. I think Diggs had a breakout. I think they had turnover luck, and I don't see it happening again. And I think the offense will be slightly worse without Amari Cooper and with Zeke aging another year. I'm just not high on Dallas in terms of repeating success. And if you look at the last 6 times they've made the playoffs, they have missed the playoffs the next year. Dallas does not handle expectations well. And this is something I can actually see Mike McCarthy, if they start slow, I could see Jerry Jones having a quick axe and getting McCarthy out of there and promoting one of those coordinators.
All right, so we have all the teams the same, not in the same order, but 6 through 16, we have all the same teams covered in some sort of order. So number 5, you talked about there being a tier in the top 4. I'm not quite there. I'm thinking it's more of a top 3 for me. So 5, I have the San Francisco 49ers. I think Kyle Shanahan's amazing, taking Jimmy Garoppolo, who's the most win-with quarterback that I can remember, to 2 NFC championship games in 3 years and having a chance to win the Super Bowl, and one of them being up in the 4th quarter. I think that was a game San Francisco could have and should have won, whatever you want to say. But they seem to be going away from him. I have no idea where Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play this year, if he plays at all. And it seems like it's about time they have to kind of put Trey Lance in there, giving up all the draft capital they parted with the trade off from the first round last year. But I'm not a Trey Lance believer, and maybe he's just the tools are there. Maybe I'm a little scarred from North Dakota State quarterbacks. Maybe that's part of it there, but I'm not sure he's the guy that you immediately plug in and it's an immediate upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo, even though you're banking on the long-term upside. So I have San Francisco 5th and the Eagles 4th. I think they're maybe in a tier together where you have, 6 through 8 or 9 can be interchangeable to a degree, but I have 4 and 5 could have it either way, and then a clear top 3 for me.
So it's funny. I'm what they call a Kyle Stanahan. So I definitely have San Fran higher.
If you say he's the best coach in the league, I don't think you're necessarily wrong.
I think he's second. But Belichick always kind of gets that, like, it's like Popovich.
Grandfather,
Popovich
yeah. Style.
So I besides Belichick, who he's just holding all these rings, so it's a little tough to say he's not. But besides him, I would take Kyle Shanahan over any other coach in the league. And I'm a Trey Lance guy. I'm a believer.
Okay. Sell me on him.
I think people point to some of the games he played early in the season last year, and they're like, I just don't see it. Watch the game against the Texans. I know it's the Texans. I get it. But watch the game against the Texans and tell me there's not flashes there. And I think a lot of people point to San Fran making the conference championship and being a Jaquiski Tartt interception through the arms away from making the Super Bowl. And they go, then they made the right decision keeping Jimmy Garoppolo in. I think that limited their ceiling. I think they should have just rolled with it, went with Trey Lance, see what happens. And I think there's a chance that could have kind of bumped them up the same way taking Alex Smith out for Colin Kaepernick that got them to the Super Bowl, lost on the last throw. I think that could have bumped them up the similar way. And I'm not saying Trey Lance is some top 5 amazing quarterback, but I do think he can kind of be the level of quarterback in today's game that I know no one wants to talk about the football impact of it, but Colin Kaepernick was when he first came in for San Francisco. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of similarities in terms of the arm talent and in terms of the athletics of Colin Kaepernick and Trey Lance. Trey Lance has all of the tools. Like he's a tantalizing prospect. I think that he's a guy where if it breaks right, he could be, an MVP candidate down the line. And I think that's the type of, I think that's the type of, there's a lot of Josh Allen in him. Like you look at him and you squint and there's a lot of Josh Allen, and they both came from, schools where makes you think that they're underdeveloped, where Josh Allen came from Wyoming playing against bad competition. Trey Lance came from North Dakota State playing against even worse competition. So there's more questions there with guys like that. And I'm not saying he will be Josh Allen, but I'm saying you squint and you can see it. Like you can see the Josh Allen there. So I think there's a real upside that Trey Lance is going to bring San Francisco. I actually have San Francisco tied for 2nd and 3rd. I couldn't break that.
I'm not there.
I know. San Francisco is actually my pick to go to the Super Bowl and lose. If I'm getting quite there, the reason I have the team number 1 that we'll get to is because I'm the most sure that they will be in the mix. And because San Fran and LA are both in that division, they're gonna hurt each other's records. But at number 5, I have the team you have at number 4 with the Philadelphia Eagles. I have us winning the division. I have us winning the NFC East. But I think that we're right outside that top 3 or 4 in terms of the tiers. And it's really because of Jalen Hurts, I think. And you look at these top 4 teams, and the Bucs have Brady, the Packers have Rodgers, the Rams have Stafford coming off of the Super Bowl, and the Niners are the team that's similar, and I could see why
that's why I have them in the same tier, because I think there's still a question mark where you don't know that, Stafford's not as good as Brady or Rodgers, obviously, but they just won a Super Bowl with him having a pass first attack. So you have to have them up there. And then you have Brady and Rodgers. That really separates you completely with, 2 of the 5, 6, whatever you want to say, best quarterbacks of all time. So I think there's still question marks for me with San Francisco quarterback. And there's still question marks, obviously, with Jalen Hurts, as much as I like him and support him. And I think, I think he can break out. I don't know if breakout is the right word, but have a season where he's still as great as a runner, and the Eagles can still have a dominant running attack while still improving as a passer with Devontae Smith's development. And then the presence of A.J. Brown just can unlock so much for him.
So the funny thing is, I would say that Jalen Hurts has a much better chance to be a top 20 quarterback in the NFL this year than Trey Lance. But I would say Trey Lance has a better chance to be a top 10 quarterback this year in the NFL than Jalen Hurts. I think he's got the higher upside even away. Because it's a little bit more unknown. We haven't seen it over a full season. So you think maybe he can with in and really level up with Jalen Hurts. I'm higher on what Jalen Hurts is right now than I think most people are. But I think I'm also lower on the idea of what he can be. Like, I kind of think we're pretty close to what Jalen Hurts is, not to be a pessimist at all. I do think he can be slightly better. He can obviously make a couple better reads. He's got better pieces than AJ Brown, obviously, right in front of him. So there are things he can improve on, and the situation itself has improved around him. So I do think he can be slightly better. I'm not there in terms of thinking he can be like a top 10 quarterback, really. That's where I kind of have them number 5. But the roster is really, really good. The reason I have San Fran in front is because of the upside with Lance, because of the gap between Shanahan and Sirianni. And I still think that defense, if you look at, the front 7 and the secondary of San Francisco, I think I would still take that over ours on paper, at least right now.
Yeah. So you have Washington, you said, as a playoff team, as a wild card team.
Yes.
Could you envision a scenario, wild card weekend, the Eagles win the NFC and they're hosting a playoff game, and Washington is coming to town and it's Carson Wentz versus Jalen Hurts in a playoff game at Lincoln Financial Field?
Oh, I could absolutely envision it. The way I had it breaking out, we got the 4 seed, and we're going to have to face San Francisco in round 1, which that'd be a
rough draw.
Definitely a rough draw. And I think the Commanders would have to go on the road to LA. I think that'd be a rough draw for them as well. So in terms of how my records broke out, but I would love to see that. I would absolutely love to see it. But by the way, that the Commanders are going to take one of the wins against us this year. And it's going to be like think piece time for everyone to write if we lost the trade or not. That's 100% going to happen.
I think the energy would be just absolutely electric. And I'd love to see what the Philadelphia response is from the fans. I'm really interested to see what happens when Washington comes to Philly and Wentz returns for the first game this year. That's a Monday night game. And I wonder, I'm sure the Eagles will try to honor him in some way. I don't know exactly what it will be. It could be a situation where I don't know if Carson's hurt or bench. I think that's on the table. I think they're, like I said, I think, they're not a terrible team. I could see them winning 8 games, whatever it is. But I'm interested to see the fan response there and what the team actually does for him, if anything. And for that to happen, for him to come to Philadelphia twice in one season. Good for me, good work-wise for us, I would say, for sure. Yeah. But I think it would give some fans a heart attack, too, at the same time.
Oh, it'd be incredible. It would be absolutely incredible.
So that's 4 and 5. Do you have the Packers 4 then? I have the Packers 3 because you have San Francisco tied 2 and 3 with LA.
Yeah, so I've got the Packers at 4, and it's really just because I am a little bit of an Aaron Rodgers hater, if you follow me. So I definitely throw some slings at Aaron Rodgers for losing in the playoffs. He's 7-9 in his last 16 playoff games. I don't think that's something 1-3 in his last 4 playoff games. I don't think that's something people talk about, and I'm just not inclined to believe after all of this time failing in the playoffs that what's going to get him over the hump is trading Davante Adams and not adding really anything around him to throw to, when clearly they needed a second guy with Davante Adams, not getting rid of Davante Adams. So
yeah, you could sell me on Davante and Christian Watson together, but not just Christian Watson, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I just don't understand what they did this offseason. Their defense will be really good again, but they lost they lose. I forget now the score, 10-7, 13-10 in the playoffs, something crazy like that to San Francisco at home, low scoring. I can't believe that Green Bay got rid of Davante after losing a playoff game like that. I get there's cap implications there, but I just don't see Green Bay breaking through when I think the top 3 teams in the NFC are also good.
Yeah, the Lambeau Field playoff advantage seems to be dissipating a bit over the last handful of years, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there is no playoff advantage when you have Aaron Rodgers on your team, it seems, dating the last decade.
What was I going to say? Oh, this is a little off topic, but you saw the tweet a week or 2 ago. I'm sure because I kind of blew up on Philly Twitter, where it was a Bengals guy. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was saying, what's the flukiest Super Bowl team of all time? And the Eagles won the poll he had, and everyone's kind of crapping on the guy. Me too, obviously. But what I thought of after the fact, and I didn't bring it up because I was thinking about it a few days later, was Nick Foles, Joe Flacco, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers have all played in the same number of Super Bowls. So what actually is fluky then?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If I was just off the top of my head to say what the flukiest Super Bowl, I think I'd go with the Flacco Ravens. That whole time that felt like a fluke. Or obviously the first Eli Super Bowl in New York, that has to be in that conversation as well. But definitely not the team that lost their starting quarterback and won the Super Bowl with their backup quarterback. I wouldn't call that a fluke. I'd call that proving how good the team initially
incredible
was.
defense.
Yeah.
Head coaching, offensive coordinator, the whole coaching nucleus there, and it speaks to why Nick is the GOAT backup quarterback. And to piggyback off that, yet again, people were talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick. Oh, he's the best backup quarterback of all time. Are you kidding me? He hasn't played a playoff game. Yep. Nick Foles has won 4 playoff games, including dropping 41 points on the greatest defensive mind of all time.
It's not even close. Ryan Fitzpatrick is I've never been a Ryan Fitzpatrick guy.
Like a jokey, fun guy, but to think that he could hold Nick Foles' jockstrap, outrageous.
It's absolutely outrageous. Jeff Garcia is number 2.
I love Garcia.
He's our baby.
That was a fun run. That was a fluky run, but that was a lot of fun, right?
Absolutely. That's a fluky run, but we're not going to get offended by saying that,
So you have San Francisco and LA tied 2-3. I have the Rams at 2. They won the Super Bowl. They could win the Super Bowl again, right? I don't think that'd be crazy. It's really, really, really hard to repeat in modern NFL, but who knows? And then number 1, obviously, I still go with Tampa Bay. Once you have Tom Brady, you're still the favorite to me. Even though things didn't work out last year, they lost to LA. Tom almost had a little comeback going on there, but it fell short. Does his little fake retirement whenever he's trying to do skirt or ownership or cap ramifications, end up in Miami, whatever. But he's still in Tampa Bay this year, and I still have him as the top seed. I'm going to predict them eventually whenever I have to go on a radio show or write an article to make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I have them ranked number 1. It's funny because I actually think the Rams and the Niners are better. But what it comes down to is the top 3 are also neck and neck. And I put them at number 1 because I'm the most sure they'll be there. I'm the most sure that when there's 4 teams left in the NFC, there's like a 95% chance that the Bucs are going to be one of those teams. I think their division's a joke this year. They're the only team I have in the top 9 in the NFC from this division. So I think they win 13 or 14 games. I think they have an inside track on home field because of that division. And when you have Tom Brady and when you have home field, you have to rank them as the number 1 contender, even if I think the Rams and the Niners might have a little bit better of a chance to get to the Super Bowl. But I'm just most sure Tampa will be there. So even though San Francisco is my pick, I'm more sure that the Bucs and Rams will be there. So that's why I ultimately rank them at 1 and 2.
What's your Super Bowl pick overall? You have San Francisco. Who makes it from the AFC and who wins for you?
The LA Chargers. I'm all aboard the Charger train. I've been all aboard it since before they made all the moves. I put in a future on them at plus 1,100 and plus 1,200 to win the AFC. They're now plus 1,400 to win the Super Bowl. I got those right before the Khalil Mack signing and right before the J.C. Jackson signing. And I think that what J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack are going to bring to that defense is similar to what Jalen Ramsey and Von Miller, having both of them, brings to Aaron Donald, because now Bosa is going to just go absolutely insane. I think that defense with Bosa, Mack, Jackson, and a bunch of other pieces, you have Justin Herbert, a quarterback, Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. I love the Chargers as a Super Bowl pick. I don't think I've ever liked a Super Bowl pick this early as much as I like the Chargers versus the 49ers.
This is just a bet. This isn't my official pick, but I took the Eagles to beat the Chargers in the Super Bowl. That specific result plus 20,000.
Oh, I love it. That'd be great for me. I'd cash my AFC bet and I'd cash my hopes and dreams with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl.
And then similarly, I took the Eagles to beat Buffalo. This was just the weekend before Memorial Day. I'm down the shore, missing football like crazy. And I took the Eagles to beat the Bills, exact result, plus 10,000.
Yeah, I'm not quite as high on Buffalo as most. I think
that's my pick. I picked it last year. It didn't come to fruition. But picking it again, Buffalo over Tampa in the Super Bowl.
Buffalo's like plus 600. It's crazy. I can't believe it.
I'm not saying odds-wise. I don't think it's a good shop, so to speak. But that's going to be my pick this year whenever I have to go on record for it.
Von Miller is definitely a huge addition. He's like, if they didn't have Von Miller, I would be like full on fade the Bills mode because everyone's so high on them. But because they have Von Miller, that is going to be such a piece on their defense as long as he, stays upright and is still the same guy from last year. But I think that division's really good with Miami and New England. I think both of those teams are going to win 9+ games. Like that, the AFC is going to be just a dogfight. There's like 7 to 10 really, really good teams in my opinion. I'm happy we're in the NFC.
All right, finish up. What is your Eagles prediction? You have them winning the NFC East. Do you have them then losing to San Francisco, I would imagine, in the wild card round. Is that what you're going with here as the 4 versus 5 matchup? Okay.
Yes, but I have us winning 11 games. I think we'll win 11 games. I think we'll win the division. I think Washington and Dallas both win 9 games. They have to figure out like the tiebreakers in terms of getting into the wild card, which I'd take. Even if we lose a playoff game, winning the division over Dallas and Washington would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm hoping, not that I necessarily want Dallas and Washington to succeed, but I'd really enjoy an NFC East playoff matchup where one of those squads is coming to Philadelphia in the middle of January.
Or bring Minnesota back with the Skull. That'd be fun.
Oh, yeah. That's another little plug. PhillyVoice.com, obviously the deputy sports editor for there. Last week, I did a kind of a worst week talking about some of the worst sports moments of my life, following the Philly teams my whole life. And this week is best week. I'm recording this on Tuesday. Monday, I talked about the best game I ever attended. I wrote about the legendary, iconic 38-7 game, so you can check out that on PhillyVoice.com. Mark, what do you have to plug? Get yourself out there to finish up.
Yeah, Saturday, 11 to 1 every week. That's my show on Fox PHL The Gambler, the Tough Cover radio show. There might be news coming soon, maybe for football season, on adding another show there on the weekend. But Shamus is a frequent guest, one of my favorite guests, absolutely, to have on the Tough Cover radio show. We're going to have him on, frequently. We got the Phils to talk about. You mentioned the best game you've ever been to. It's sad, but I have to bring up the best game I've ever been to 2 days ago. Or 2 days ago now. That Phillies game, probably the most fun Phillies game I've ever been to. Bryce Harper hitting that grand slam, Bryson Stott hitting that home run to win the game, like 2 sections over from me. It's pretty sad that a June game against the Angels in a season we're under 500, probably my favorite game I've ever been to. But that stadium was rocking for the first time in 11 years. I haven't felt anything like that since 2011. So that's my plug.
I've seen a couple of big Phillies games. I was at the Doc playoff no-hitter.
Wow.
Which was in consideration. I was also at Game 5 in 2008.
Oh, well, yeah, those absolutely trump.
Yeah, those are the 2 best Phillies games ever. So I did have I'm very lucky in life that I've been able to attend some phenomenal sports moments, some of the greatest moments in Philadelphia sports history. But I still went with the 38-7 game because of what the Eagles meant to me. And I think there's, as much as that Phillies run was electric and so much fun, the Eagles have just a different vibe in Philadelphia, especially when they're good compared to the Phillies.
Well, I've got the opposite. I see all the worst moments. I saw Game 5, 2011 NLDS against the Cardinals where we lost 1-0. Ryan Howard tears his Achilles. I saw Game 5 last year against the Atlanta Hawks where we blow the 26-point lead. That was actually, I don't know if you even know this or remember this. I had a viral tweet going around about my girlfriend being undefeated at Philadelphia Sports.
Oh, that was you? That was you?
Me, yeah. That was me. We had, I think we went to 4 playoff games in that run, 2 that they won against the Wizards, 1 that they won against Atlanta. We go there. The Sixers are DMing me on bringing me down to do a thing after the game if they win. Sports Nation DM'd me that they wanted to have me on live with my girlfriend after to talk about the win. They DM me at halftime, and then the Sixers blow a 26-point lead in Game 5. I'm there for the worst moments in Philadelphia sports, so I should probably stay away from now on.
Ending it on a pessimistic note is the most Philadelphia way to close this out. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, @Shamus_Clancy. You could obviously follow my work on PhillyVoice.com as well. Check out everything Mark talked about. You can follow him on Twitter @MarkHenryJr_. Definitely do that. Mark's a great follow, especially if you're into gambling and fantasy and all that good stuff too. Mark, thank you for coming on, my man. We'll have to talk on The Gambler soon, though.
Of course, anytime.
Anytime. Keep bleeding green, everyone.